Oh, Savannah's not in here. Well, I can handle that. Well, we can do a little better than that here. Oh my gosh, it wants me to log in. Of course. Yeah, just fix it, Zach. Set the house lights to the lowest setting, and we'll just roll with it. Aiden, punch the brightness adjuster. Turn that up all the way. All right, guys. Well, there's only one. You got it. Yeah, you just push that up button. I'm sorry, that was mean. I know what you were asking. That was mean. All right. So, week 5. I got it right this week. I almost missed it by that much. The last second, I was like, oh, I need to change that. Mom caught me on it last week. They're in, Norway this morning. Isn't that crazy? That is so weird. Last night, Abby's like, I wonder what they're doing, and I looked it up. It's 2 a.m. there. All right, okay, I want to go back over. So previous weeks, we've been in the study of Proverbs. We're going to be in it for a while yet. Previous weeks, we've just been hashing through the importance of gaining and valuing wisdom. By the way, Thomas, I apologize, but during worship, sometime my little cover fell off, so it's going to be poppy. Been going through the importance of gaining and valuing wisdom, integrity, discernment, living a life that are defined by these traits, and we've kind of begun to show what those different traits look like, how they crop up in different arenas. But we've essentially just been encouraging those walking with those godly qualities that define that path of righteousness on which we are safe, right? That path of righteousness that protects us, not so God can be happy with us, not so we can have checked all the boxes, but because we are safe there. That is where our best life is lived. It protects us. It guides us into all good things, right? Now, last week, we did chapter 5, and in what Savannah called the weirdest sermon ever, we talked about sex, and we talked about the importance of putting God first in that area, but we talked about both sides of that coin in that, there's the side that the church is always doing, which is hey, save it for marriage, honor God in this area, walk in integrity in this area because it's bad, right? But we don't really talk about the other side, which is the good side, where we're promoting the right thing, where we're not just encouraging us to avoid something that's damaging, but also encouraging us towards something that is enriching and fruitful and wonderful. And so we don't spend a lot of time in church talking about that God is pro-sex, that God is for sex and for good sex. And so we I know it's super weird, but that's what we talked about last week, a.k.a. Savannah called it the weirdest sermon ever. And so in all of that, encouraging to put God first in that area, that we are not going to regret that. I talked about missing out. You remember that? A lot of times we have this feeling if we follow God, we're going to miss out on the goodness of life, as if the creator of the entire universe, sex, and everything else in the world that is good, as if he somehow wants to offer us a lesser version of what he took all the time to create. It's such a lie that we get sold, and so we miss out on so much. So in the next couple of weeks, I want to give you guys a little forecast. It's going to be a little different. So Ross is going to take chapter 7 for me next week. Ross has got a presentation he's put together for us. Where is Ross? Oh, he probably stepped out. He's going to take chapter 7 for us next week. I'll be here, but then the next week I'm going to be gone, and we're going to jump to chapter 10, and Thomas is going to take chapter 10. The reason for this is that chapters 8 and 9, they're really just completely repeats of what we've gone through, talking about I'll give you them in a nutshell. Listen, my son, to my instruction. Please hear me. Please don't miss this. Put wisdom first. Put discernment first. It will keep you on the path to life. It will lead you on good paths. Blah, blah, blah. It's basically that whole bit again in chapters 8 and 9. I strongly encourage that you read them so that we're following all the way through. But we are going to jump to chapter 10, and Thomas is going to pick up there. In chapter 10, oh, there it is. There's my little nugget. Mashed completely flat. In chapter 10, Proverbs kind of shifts, and it starts being what a lot of us think of when we think of in Proverbs, where it's just basically a whole chapter of just The fool says in his heart, blah, 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 blah. The wise person does this. It's basically just these little quips, these little quotable quips of wisdom. And so it's going to be, I'm looking forward to getting to there because there will be no shortage of things to preach about when we get into that. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. Ross is going to be next week on chapter 7. Thomas the next week on chapter 10. We're skipping 8 and 9. But today, we are on chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse 1. My child, if you've put up security for a friend's debt or agreed to guarantee the debt of a stranger, is that a good idea? If you have trapped yourself by your agreement and are caught by something that you have said, follow my advice and save yourself. For you have placed yourself at your friend's mercy. Okay, so what this is talking about is making well-intentioned but foolish decisions. Have any of you guys ever made a well-intentioned but really foolish decision? Have any of you guys ever been talked into something that you woke up the next morning and thought, what was I thinking? You know what I'm talking about? This is talking about those kind of things. What do you guys usually do when you find yourself in a situation, because I'm about to broaden this out quite a bit. When you find yourself in a situation where you didn't intend to make a foolish decision, but you're now, as he's talking about, trapped by what you have said or what you've done or the position that you put yourself in. You're like stuck in this no-win situation. Pure Desire would call it a double bind, a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. What do you guys usually do when you find yourself there? What do you do? Yeah. What do you do, Abby? Panic? Okay. Yeah. Any other takers? Nope. Nobody's feeling brave. So what I usually do is I just stick it out. I push past that sick feeling in my gut. You know what I'm talking about? I push past it, and it's like, well, I said it, so we'll just see how this plays out. We'll hope for the best, kind of like what you said there. And, I think there's a lot of reasons that I do this, but I think the significant one is what I said in worship there, fear. I think the significant one is I'm worried what they will think if I come back to the table and, go back on my word or double back on what I've said or whatever, right? Like there's a fear thing there, I don't want to be seen as that kind of person. Well, fear of what they might think of me. And in some ways, we've even kind of been taught that there's kind of this honor there as well, almost no take-backs, no Indian giving, that kind of thing. But the first thing I want to tell you guys is, firstly, people like that, the kind of person that would disapprove of you coming back to the table and humbling yourself and being honest about how you feel, the kind of person that would disapprove of that, you don't need to worry about what they think anyway. Okay? The kind of person that wants you to stay in a situation that is harmful or dangerous to you is not the kind of person you need to worry about what they think. Okay? I need you to hear me on that. Because here's the thing, while God certainly wants us to learn some more upfront wisdom, ideal is we don't end up in those situations. Ideal is we learn to not get talked into stuff. We learn to not get ourselves into situations. That's what the Proverbs is talking about when it says wisdom will keep you from all of these dangerous places, because we begin to grow where our path goes straight. We don't find ourselves caught in these should have seen that coming, because we did see it coming and we made a different decision. So that's obviously ideal. But can I just say this? Following through with a plan that you know is dumb is worse than you agreeing to it in the first place. Okay? Following through with a plan that you know is dumb and harmful and hurtful and dangerous is even worse than having gotten yourself there in the first place. When we choose to stick through with that, I want you to understand something. We're preserving our pride, not our integrity. We might feel because of fear, we're preserving our integrity. Well, no, I said it, so I'm going to do it. And I'm not saying, hear me. I'm not saying there's never a time where we need to be people of our word. Obviously, we are meant to be people of our word and that kind of thing. So I'm not saying to be flighty and, what's the word I'm going for? Double-minded, unreliable. That's not what I'm promoting here. Because by and large, my opinion is that when we say something, we should do it. We should honor our word. We should live by that. But there are exceptions to that rule, and when we find ourselves in an exception to that rule where we realize we have done something stupid and we don't want to go back and humble ourselves and admit that, dude, I don't know what I was thinking, I should have never committed to that. When we're in that sort of place, by not doing that, by overriding those feelings, we're not preserving our integrity, we're preserving our pride. We're worried about how we will look. Most of the time, I find, it's preserving pride. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Verse 3, he says, now swallow your pride. Go and beg to have your name erased. If you find yourself in this situation, if you find yourself in this commitment or this thing that's like, what was I thinking? This was so dumb. I should not have done this. This is harmful to my health. Swallow your pride. Go and beg to have your name erased. Don't put it off. Do it now. Don't rest until you do. Y'all, procrastination. Can I just say this? Seeds in the freezer do not produce fruit. Seeds left in the freezer will produce fruit once put in the ground, but until they're put in the ground, they will not produce fruit in our lives. Save yourself like a gazelle escaping from a hunter, like a bird fleeing from a net. So here's what it's saying. Leave your pride on the ground. Go to the person that you have gotten in this situation with and be like, I'm so sorry. I do not want to be this kind of person. I don't want to be unreliable and all of those kinds of things, but I should never have committed to this because I don't believe in this and this isn't right. Maybe it's that kind of situation. Or maybe it's this isn't healthy for me and this is dangerous for my health, recovery, whatever it might be. Or maybe it's, fill in the blank. I'm not here to be prideful. I'm not here to hold on to look, I made a mistake. I should not have committed to that, and I'm so sorry for having done that. But I cannot follow through this, and please, we got to arrange a different situation here or whatever. That is integrity. That is a humility that isn't trying to be self-preserving, isn't trying to hold on to its pride. And that, again, this is the fallback plan. Like, the first plan is don't end up in there in the first place, right? But the fallback plan of wisdom here is, hey, don't go down with the ship, dum-dum. Don't go down with the ship. Don't walk. Let me give you a practical example of this in my life. So, with my recovery and with my, addictive background and things like that, I hold pretty stiff boundaries for myself regarding, and this is just so standard for anybody in my kind of recovery. It's just I just stay away from one-on-ones with women of my age or whatever. I just don't do that, and you see pastors all the time fall and there's all kinds of weird stuff and they were doing counseling together. You know what I mean? All that kind of, I don't do that. I hold pretty strict boundaries for myself in that area. I try to avoid those kinds of situations. I try to bring in a second. Those kinds of things. Why? It's because it's wise. Because wisdom in that area protects me, and it protects my family, and it keeps everything headed in the right direction, because that's the path of integrity. That's why. So I'm pretty strict on that. But there have been times in my life, even before being married, there have been times in my life where I found myself in a situation that I didn't necessarily intend to find myself in, but where it was an inappropriate situation, or it was this isn't safe, this isn't the kind of environment I need to be in, this isn't, and I didn't mean to get there, right? Probably with a little wisdom and a little maturity, I could have avoided being in that situation, right? But in the given moment, I didn't catch that up front, and I've ended up in this situation. Now, when you're in that situation, some of you guys might know what I'm talking about, and it may be different for you, but the thoughts in your mind is well, I don't want to make this uncomfortable. I don't want to be a weirdo. You know what I'm talking about? I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to. But see, all of that stuff, that's my pride speaking. That's not integrity. That's my pride speaking. And to interpret this verse into that situation, don't wait, don't hesitate, make the situation right, and get on the path that you know is right. So, and I've had to do this before, where it's just hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to be weird, but I don't put myself in these situations, so we need to go have a conversation out there in the foyer, or we need to this, or we need to that. And sometimes that is I just got to bite the bullet, swallow my pride, and just be not trying to be weird, but this is just a boundary that I hold for myself. I don't do that type of thing. You know what I mean? But sometimes I don't have to do that. There have been times where I could subtly like, hey, I need to ask you something, you know? Are y'all catching the vision that I'm casting here? Because there's so many areas in our life where we end up in situations where sticky stuff happens that we unintentionally put ourselves in that situation, but then we didn't get out of that situation when we became aware of the fact that we didn't need to be there. So what I want to tell you guys, especially in your recovery and stuff, don't hold on to your pride in that. You're getting into that car and all of a sudden something feels wrong, and I mean, y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't push past that. Don't push past that. Be the person of integrity that can say, hey, whoa, I said I would go, but you know what, guys, I'm not comfortable with that person. I'm not getting in the car with them. Look, it's fine, y'all go, I'm not going. You see what I'm saying? All right. I'm going to move on. Verse 6. Take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. Say what you really think. Learn from their ways and become wise. Though they have no prince or governor or ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. But you lazy bones, how long will you sleep? When will you wake up? A little extra sleep, a little more slumber, a little more folding of the hands to rest, then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. You know, Abby's been reading this book on like trees and stuff, and anyway, she's a double-barrel naturalist on stuff. And you know, when you really start to study like nature, it's incredible to me, and this is going to make sense in a second. It's incredible to me how like in nature you see such a low degree of intelligence, carrying such a high level of wisdom. I want y'all to understand something. Intelligence does not equal wisdom. Some of the most intelligent people in the world, we are the most intelligent by far species on earth, right? And yet it's amazing to me how in nature you see a low degree of intelligence possessing a high degree of wisdom, and yet here we are with all our intelligence, and we can barely keep ourselves alive. You know what I'm talking about? Like we can barely keep from literally destroying ourselves. Such a low level of wisdom. What is wisdom? We talked about this, that you know, the wisdom, like to do what's right, to know what we should be doing in a given moment and do it. Like we possess such a low level of wisdom. And it's amazing how when you look at nature, like an ant, you know, is not that intelligent. You know, I mean, I know some documentary is going to be like, no, they actually have an incredible, I mean, I agree, but, you know, they're not out there designing. You know, they have a low level of intelligence. They're never going to figure out how to do certain things, right? But yet there's a wisdom there. There's a follow-through. There's a doing what you need to do when it's time to do it piece of wisdom that we so often lack. I used to literally think this verse meant sleep. I used to kind of, it was like, I felt like God was like a little bit not pleased with me if I was sleeping in too much. And this was sort of backed up by the fact that my grandpa was definitely not pleased with me if I slept in too much. Like, he had a mentality that was like, you know, time's a wasting type of thing. Like, if you slept until 7, there's just an inherent amount of shame in it, you know, like you know, there was that kind of thing. Some of you guys probably know what I'm talking about. And I used to feel that way about God, like, this verse was literally, and here's what I want to say. While this verse could apply to sleep, it's not inherently about sleep. These proverbs are giving us principles, not rules. The beauty of a principle is that it can apply to many different things. It's flexible. It's adaptive is a good word. A principle can be adaptive, just like that last example I gave you, to many different situations, and the same principle apply, even if it doesn't necessarily equate the exact same action. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? That's where it's so important that we have the right principles guiding what we do, because then regardless of what situation I'm in, whether right is 20 degrees to the left or whether right is 45 degrees to the left or whether right is 30 degrees to the right, I'm going to act out of the principle and do the right thing by what the situation demands. You see what I'm saying? Rules aren't flexible like that. Rules are every time, every place, here's the response. And sometimes the rules lead us in good things and sometimes they don't. You see what I mean? That's where it's important that we are walking in spirituality, not religion. That's where it's important that we're walking in a connection to God's heart, living by these principles that the Bible is teaching us. And so Proverbs is teaching us principles. And so in this particular thing, it's not a rule about sleep. It's a principle about diligence and discipline as opposed to procrastination. What it's getting at is, winter comes every year. It's not like there's some years where it's like, boy, winter just never happened. Fall just went right into spring. I mean, I know in Arkansas it gets close to that, but we always have winter, y'all. There's never a time when we don't have winter, and then spring, and then summer. It happens every year. And the ants know that it's coming, so they prepare. And I look at our lives, and there's so many things that we know are coming, and yet we fail to prepare. We fail to take the appropriate steps, whatever that might look like. That could be situationally like I'm saying. Knowing that, let me drag it back to what I was just saying. Knowing that I'm going to be in a potentially not great situation and taking the proper preparation of bringing somebody along with me, right? Like, even down to that level. The fines come every month. The bills come every month. And yet so often we fail to prepare and to live in such a way as to be ready for that. And then we end up in a position where it feels like life is unmanageable and life is just kicking our butt all the time. And then we start feeling sorry for ourselves. And then we start blaming other factors and not taking responsibility. And I'm the king of this. So I'm just preaching to you something that I've just learned in my life. And it's not any of that. It's this. You know it's coming. Financially, time management. Writing the sermon each week. Do y'all know how many sermons I write on Saturday night? It's unbelievable. It comes every week. When I walk out of church on Sunday, I know that it's coming. And yet somehow I end up at 9 o'clock at night writing a sermon on Saturday night. And then I start feeling like, oh, life is just so hard. I tell you what, I just never have any time. Man, here I am. No. No. How many mornings did you sleep in till 7, David? How many nights did you watch 3 episodes of whatever you were watching that night? You know what I'm saying? No. This is a self-induced crisis. How many of us know what I'm talking about? How many self-induced crises do we blame on outside factors? And can I tell you from a point of addiction, when we start feeling sorry for ourselves, we're in a really dangerous spot. When we start feeling like we're owed something, when we start feeling like life is unmanageable, all of these things are significant lead-ups to being in a position where we need to reach for some kind of outside help or comfort. We don't typically, when we start, and maybe y'all haven't gotten to the point where you've started living this yet, but let me tell you something. When you start getting to a place where life is just really good, it's like, I wouldn't think of going back to that. I don't even want to think about going back to that. Man, life is so good. I don't want that. We're safe there. It's when we get into a position where life's not so good, or we feel like we just can't get out from under the monkey on our back, or we feel like everything's that's where we start having problems. And so much of that, at least in my life I've learned, is self-induced crises, because unlike the ant, I know winter's coming, but I don't adequately prepare for it. I choose to be irresponsible. I choose to not take adult, if you will, steps to prepare for what I know is coming. And then I find myself in a position where I feel like burnout. Burnout is a product, and I hate to make too big of statements, but burnout, I've learned, it's largely a product not of what you're doing, but how you're doing it. It's not a product of the things you're doing. Burnout is a product of the way you're going about it. You're going about it in an unsustainable fashion, and guess what? If you work the mule daily till dark, if you work it in an unsustainable fashion, if you run the engine up the hill in the wrong gear, if you use it wrong, it's going to burn out, It's going to blow up. It wasn't made to work that way. And so often, living life abundantly isn't in some far-off fantasy. It's really in re-engaging the life we're living in a slightly different way, with a slightly different approach, mindset, priority, right? I've really, this whole living lazy thing, I call it this, living reactive versus living intentional. I've made one of my biggest goals living intentional lately. I've made that a high priority for myself because for so much of my life I've lived reactively, which means deadlines are coming, things are happening, I'm not planning, I'm not any of that. I'm just living reactively. What needs done today? Trying to keep up with the conveyor belt. And then, guess what? Appointments get forgotten, things get missed, I start feeling like life is unmanageable, and that's life's fault, not my fault, right? I'm learning to live intentionally, which means God has given me the intelligence, the resources, the energy. He has given me what I need. There's a chapter at the end of the Pure Desire book, and it says, hey, listen, before you're ever going to be able to take your promised land, you've got to learn to win. You've got to learn to experience victory with what you have, not with what you don't have. And a lot of us feel like we're missing one piece of the puzzle that's keeping victory at bay. But I want you to know victory won't be found in you finally getting that piece of the puzzle. Victory will be found when you learn to start winning with what you have. When you learn to start approaching your life and your time and your resources in such a way that you are living victoriously with what you have. And then the Bible says those who have will be given more. Those who don't have, even what they have or what they think they have, it says, will be taken away from them. I'm learning what this means in my life. And I'm leading the way here, y'all, because I have been the world's worst. I have burnout. I mean, you ask anybody that knows me, burnout and spiraling have just been like my standard of existence for the last 8 years. And honestly, it's hurt me quite a bit. It's kept me back from opportunities. It's caused me to burn bridges that really I wanted to cross. It's caused me to have to back up from things like the music, was one of those things that I just was so passionate about, and it's such a dream for me, and I mean, just that door, I shut that door in my life because I could not manage my time and resources. Are we okay? Okay. So living reactive versus living intentional. Well, I want to share one last thing here on this before I move forward. In my story, what this looked like, and this is just a practical thing. Maybe this helps some of you guys. Maybe this isn't your issue, but I've learned to start scheduling, to live by a schedule. I have started planning. I've never done this in my life, and I just, a couple months back, figuring out I'm ADHD kind of started me on a journey towards this because I started realizing that, no, it's not that life is unmanageable, just like I am approaching it completely wrong. And so I've started, just as a thing, and I'm now in love with it, I've started planning my time like 2 months out, which I know some of you guys can't do this right now because you're not in a position to have that kind of autonomy, but you'll get there. I've started planning my time like 2 months out, where it's just like, because one of the things I've felt in life is just like, it just feels like I never have time to do anything I want to do, any of the goals and bucket lists, that kind of stuff. I'm not like living, I'm just surviving. I'm not thriving, I'm surviving. I've been feeling that lately. And so, now I'm mad at God. Now maybe I'm not in the right career, and maybe I need to quit things, and all of this spirally stuff. And I've learned, no, there's so much room in my life for so many good things if I will just take the intentionality to plan them out. Because what I've learned is my current life isn't getting impacted that much by it yet. I've got my life planned all the way through July. When I'm mowing, I've gone that far, like, hey, I'm going to have to mow every 2 weeks. We live in July in Arkansas. We live in Arkansas in July. It's just what it is, right? I'm going to mow every 2 weeks. So I can rebel against that and kick against the goads and be mad when I never have time to do anything, or I can accept reality, which wisdom is all about aligning ourselves with reality instead of trying to establish our own and get reality to bend to us, a position in which we're constantly unhappy and don't have any peace, right? But instead, I'm bringing myself into alignment with reality. I'm going to have to mow every 2 weeks. It just is what it is. And what it says has amazed me is when I put it on the calendar, instead of just living reactively in the now, when I plan it out, it suddenly doesn't feel as heavy or overwhelming that I have to do that along with everything else. Matter of fact, I found a couple weekends in there that I actually can do something with. See what I'm talking about? And what's cool is this hasn't affected the now all that much yet, but at some point, July is going to become the now. And then I'm starting to live in a reality that I have begun to plant and pay down on, right? Something that I'm doing now is eventually going to become my now. Does that make sense? Because come July, there's already stuff built in. And in July now, I'm planning September, and now I'm impacting my daily reality. I'm telling you, I love this, and it's led to feeling empowered instead of powerless. Feeling on top of things instead of overwhelmed. And it's even saved my butt, because like this week, when Abby called me and was like, hey, the beach trip with my family that I said was on the 21st or whatever, that's actually 2 weeks from now and I mean, at first I started to be really upset because in the past, just living with everything up in my head, it just would have blasted my plan into oblivion. You know what I mean? But I stopped and I was like, wait a minute. I've planned everything. I know what all needs done. Nothing has to fall through the cracks. All I have to do is look at the schedule and just move things into whatever. And it made that really pretty stressful thing like no big deal. No big deal. And guess what? My recovery radar just had a tiny little blip in it. There was no like big crash of like, I can never, feel, none of that. It helped me stay. So anyway, I know I'm just harping on this, but it's just been blowing my mind lately as I've been applying even just like a simple principle like that. Which again, isn't about sleep. It could certainly apply to sleep if that's your thing. But what it's getting at is living intentionally instead of living reactively. When we know these things are coming. And can I tell you something? When you begin to prepare for the things you know are coming, those things that you don't know are coming, just like I just shared, aren't as big of a deal. And a lot of us live in a position where we're not preparing well for the things we know are coming, and then when those things we don't know happen, it's just unmanageable. It just blows it all to pieces. Are you all tired of hearing me talk about that? Guys, I'm telling you, that's good stuff. I just get that. Get that. Start living on top of you. Start living your life instead of your life living you. That's how I like to say it. Start living your life instead of your life living you. And if you need some help with that, if you're like, bro, I'm not sure how I could do, come talk to me. I'll help you. Come talk to me. All right, verse 12. What are worthless and wicked people like? They are constant liars, signaling their deceit with a wink of the eye, a nudge of the foot, or the wiggle of the fingers. I picture like a car salesman there. I hope none of you guys are car salesmen. I apologize if you are. Their perverted hearts plot evil and constantly stir up trouble. But they will be destroyed suddenly, broken in an instant beyond all hope of healing. Man, when I read that, for one, I see me and I'm just like, man, I can just look at my life and see how for so much of my life, even though I didn't mean to be, I just lived out of all of that stuff. I just lived reactively. My heart was constantly even though I wasn't even meaning to, it was plotting evil, finding ways to get into trouble, causing problems for me and people around me. Being abusive because Abby didn't rub me the right way on something and said something that triggered me. You know what I mean? Just my broken heart, just living out of this constant, just making a mess. And when you look at the world around us, you just see it everywhere. It's just I thought this week of the verse in Psalms, it's how long will the nations conspire against the Lord? How long will they essentially seek to live in rebellion when God has made us a beautiful world and given us all the instructions in how to live well in it? But like I said earlier, we somehow go out. Have y'all seen that meme or GIF or whatever on Facebook where the sheep is stuck in the trench and it finally gets out, or the person gets it out and it literally runs bloop and runs right back into the same trench a couple of yards down. That's how we are. I don't want to live like that anymore. The more of a taste I get of what good life is, of what living out of a pure heart is, not to say that my heart is pure, but it's becoming a lot more so, the less I want to go back to those ways. The more of a taste I'm developing for this, I want more of it. I want less of all that has defined me in the past, Verse 16, there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 things he detests, the original 6, 7. Solomon was way ahead of the game. Oh, come on. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that kill the innocent, a heart that plots evil, feet that race to do wrong, a false witness who pours out lies, a person who sows discord in a family. First, before I talk about this at all, I want us to reframe detest a little bit. Because you know something? Whenever I read the Bible as a younger man, when I would see the word detest, and this verse was one of them, it just felt like a gun cocked and pointed at me. You know what I mean? When I read the word detest, it's like, and I think that's because that's what I believed about God. Like I saw God as this thing to please, you know? This thing to please that was inevitably unhappy with me. And so whenever I read the word detest, it's like I identified with it as like the feeling that God had towards me. You know what I'm talking about? But you know, I thought about it this week. What are some things we detest? We detest sickness. Guys, I have been like allergy, sickness, something or other since like the start of the year. Singing is such a struggle for me. I have 2 toddlers. I detest sickness. I detest cold and flu season. You know? It's the worst. Josie, you're back there nodding your head. We detest kids being taken before their time. Car accidents. Guys, we detest a tool that doesn't work properly, you know? Like a tool that's meant to do something and it just doesn't do it well, a Harbor Freight special. We just detest a tool that doesn't work right, that leaves us in the lurch. Right? We detest these things. So can y'all see that there are some things that it's good to detest? You know, if you didn't detest those things, something would be a little bit twisted in you. Like if you didn't detest kids getting killed in car accidents, that would be a little bit off, right? So can we reframe detesting something? Let's look at this again. God detests haughty eyes. Can I say it this way? God detests when people work to establish their own merit, when he's gone to such lengths to provide them with merit they don't have to earn. I don't think we understand how sad that is. How much better it is to be able to relax into the security found in unmerited favor, in grace. I feel so sorry for people who are out there trying to live well enough or check all the boxes and do all the things so that they can like look good to themselves. Oh man, what a bondage that is. Man, that is rough. And they have those few moments where they feel on top of the world, they feel better than everybody else. And guys, that is something so to be pitied because of how rich and good it is to just not even have to worry about it, to be secure and rooted in God and his grace, whether or not we deserve it, not because of anything we've done. That is beautiful. And yes, when people with that all sitting right there to be had, when people choose to live and try to work and make themselves look good and all of that, the whole system that is built around that, yes, he detests that because they're missing out on so much. A lying tongue. Guys, dishonesty is like a termite that undermines the structure that undermines the integrity of the structure. You can look at a house with termite damage and it looks fine, but it's about to fall in. That's how dishonesty is. It destroys trust. It creates distance and separation. You can't have, we talked about intimacy last week. We can't have intimacy with one another where dishonesty is present. I can't be intimate with you if you're not honest. If everything you sell me is a false version of the truth, then there's no intimacy. How sad. All the things that dishonesty robs from us. And yes, God detests it. Can I ask you something here? If God detests something, would it be good for us to detest it a little more? See, when we see God as this angry person that wants us to satisfy him with our goodness or righteousness or adherence to his rules, then him detesting something is kind of just him being fussy. When God is a good God who wants good for us, who wants the best for us, when he detests something, that's something we should have a healthy detest for as well. Do you see that? I probably don't detest dishonesty enough in myself. I'm probably too comfortable with white lies and partial truths. if I detested it like God did, I would probably experience a lot more freedom in my life. Hands that kill the innocent, a heart that plots evil, a heart that remember the condition of our heart defines our lives. Feet that race to do wrong, a false witness that pours out lies, a person who sows discord in a family. I want y'all to see here that which harms and separates, that which betrays, that which abuses, that which perpetrates injustice, that which robs us of the birthright that we have in Christ, are all things that God detests. And I want y'all to see that it is actually God's love that establishes the boundaries of his hatred of that which harms the things he loves. So whenever we see in the Bible God hating something, God detesting something, rather than buying the message that we've often been sold, which is that we need to live in fear of the angry God thing, rather than living in that, can we recognize that it is because of God's love for us that he has such an intense reaction to certain things. It is because of how much God loves us that he hates and despises certain things that harm us and harm those around us. Because the worst thing about it for God, I think, is that when we have that broken heart, when we live out of these broken things, we harm ourselves and it hurts him. But that's a double-sided sword there. Because we hurt ourselves, which is that which he loves, and that brokenness within us also hurts others, which is that which he loves. So yeah, he has a healthy hatred of those things that rob us blind and cause us to harm those around us. Because honestly, do any of those things that we just, of that list, do any of those things hurt God? Not directly, no. But it does hurt us. Holds us back. All right, I'll move on. Verse 20. My son, obey your father's commands. I'm just going to read on through the rest of the proverb at this point. Some of it's kind of like what we talked about last week. And don't neglect your mother's instruction. Keep their words always in your heart. Tie them around your neck. When you walk, their counsel will lead you. Oh, we need that. When you sleep, they will protect you. When you wake up, they will advise you around the clock. Wisdom and discernment and integrity is watching over you. For their command is a lamp and their instruction a light. Their corrective discipline is the way to life. This is getting into last week's chapter. It will keep you from the immoral woman or man, from the smooth tongue of a promiscuous woman. Don't lust for her beauty. Don't let her coy glances seduce you. For a prostitute will bring you to poverty, but sleeping with another man's wife will cost you your life. Can a man scoop a flame into his lap and not have his clothes catch on fire? Can he walk on hot coals and not blister? Sorry, my thing just zoomed in like 100%. His feet. So it is with the man who sleeps with another man's wife. He who embraces her will not go unpunished. Excuses might be found for a thief who steals because he is starving. But if he is caught, he must pay back 7 times what he stole, even if he has to sell everything in his house. But the man who commits adultery is an utter fool, for he destroys himself. Remember that Jesus said that every other sin a man commits outside of his body, or maybe it was in the New Testament somewhere, but sexual sin is a sin against our very being, you know? Where was I? He will be wounded and disgraced. His shame will never be erased. For the woman's jealous husband will be furious, and he will show no mercy when he takes revenge. He will accept no compensation, nor be satisfied with a payoff of any size. Guys, I'm going to wrap up here. There's only a few things I want to say here. First of all, that line, I like this. Can a man sweep hot coals into his lap and not have his clothes catch on fire? Can he walk on hot coals and not blister his feet? Let me just zoom out a little bit here. When it comes to sin, guys, whatever it might be, we don't think it's going to cost us. We know technically, I think of all the times that I've been, was warned by mom or whatever, by Sharon, like, hey, that's not going to, you don't want to go there. And in the moment, we no, that's true, but we don't actually believe it's costing us in the moment, If we genuinely, mom used to say this to me, if we genuinely believed, or if we could genuinely see the end of the path that we're on, it would be very easy to choose a different path. Mom, I'm telling you, Mom told me that 1,000 times. And I sadly did reach the end of the path, or real close to it. And boy, was she right. Boy, was she right. If I could go back and if I was just given Aladdin's lamp, if I was given like one free do-over, I would go back and change some of those things. Because as many of you guys can attest, the end of the path is very real. And at no point along the journey did we think that was where it was going to lead us. Because it didn't look like that in that given moment. But that given moment led to another given moment. Because here's the thing, what was broken was in here. So it never stopped with that given thing. Because what was broken in here kept leading it into something else. And then that, you know what I'm talking about? And then we found ourselves in a place that if we could have just seen where it would lead, we would have made completely different decisions. I want you guys to know what we plant in the ground will come up. It may not come up today. It may not come up tomorrow. It may not come up 2 years from now. But the seed you plant in the ground, the Bible says, do not be deceived. God isn't mocked. What a man reaps, he sows. That goes either direction. And we talk all the time about planting good seed, nurturing good seed in our life. But guys, when we willfully choose to plant bad seed, understand, that comes up too. That comes up too. And seed produces plants, and plants produce fruit, which produce more seed. So there's an exponential experience in that. You know what I mean? Because it's not just one seed. When we plant a bad seed and it produces a bad plant, just like when we produce good seed, it produces bad fruit. And what is fruit? It's just seeds. It's just the next round of harvest. So I'm just begging you guys, just encouraging you guys to walk the path of righteousness, to get all of this that we're talking about. If you get anything, to get righteousness, to get wisdom, to get integrity, not so God can be happy with you, not so you can be a good little church person, but so that you can avoid the pitfalls, so that you can walk a blessed life. Proverbs is repeatedly telling us, the man who follows God's instruction, blessed is he. So I'm just encouraging you guys. I don't know where you're at. I don't know what you're walking in. I don't know what you're struggling with. I don't know where you're working in your healing, but I just want to encourage you in it to keep working it, to keep growing it, because it is worth it to plant good seed. It is worth it to plant good seed. May we live long enough to see our lives and our gardens begin to be defined by the good seed. Not everybody in here is a spring chicken. Amen. Let's start planting some good seed so we can live to see it come up. Because we've certainly seen enough of the bad seed come up. All right, guys, recapping real quick. Preserve integrity, not your pride. In those situations I was talking about, what is the choice of integrity? Forgetting about pride. Stop and ask yourself that. What am I protecting here? Is it because, and there are times when genuinely, no, I promised I would show up and I'm going to show up and help or whatever. But there's also times when, no, I can't go there. I'm sorry. I've got to do what's right before protecting my pride and worrying what you think about it. Don't sit here and be worried about what people think that don't give a hoot, that are not concerned about your well-being, that are not interested in you walking a path of integrity. I'll tell you this. If somebody's not willing to respect your boundaries, I would highly question how much how much access they need to have to you. And you're going to notice when you start drawing boundaries, a lot of people are not going to react well. And I'm not saying that means you got to cut them out, but the kind of person that respects the boundaries that you draw, that's the kind of person that's safe to get close to. All right, I'm sorry. I'm going off on a rabbit trail. My Lord. All right, number 2, the second thing I said, living intentionally instead of living reactively. Man, dig into what that means for you. Because I'm going to tell you, it's hard to build much of a life on reactive living because you can never get very far in front of you. If you can learn how to live intentionally, now you've got something going on. So I want to encourage you guys, wherever that is in your life, financially, whatever it might look like, wherever you're struggling with, staying a couple steps ahead of yourself or whatever, learn what it means. Come talk to me, talk to somebody else. Learn what it means to live intentionally. dwell on what would that look like for you? Because I'm telling you, that will change your life. Will you guys bow your heads with me? Lord, I thank you for another week. God, I pray over all of us, wherever we're at on our journey, wherever we're learning and growing and pressing forward. And God, I just pray that you'd meet us there. And I pray that you'd grow integrity in our hearts, wisdom, and discernment. I pray this every week, God, that we would live lives that are more and more defined by you, your way of doing things, what you declare is right and just and true, rather than what we feel is right and just and true. Just give us eyes to see, God, ears to hear, open our hearts to you in a new way. And I just pray that you would pursue us this week and that we would come together next week having grown and learned something and seen something and developed an awareness this week. In Jesus' name, amen. One last thing. This is our last week of Freedom Groups for this round. This will be our last week. A reminder that next week we will be having, so not this Sunday, but next Sunday, we will be having the cookout at Knoxville City Park at 4:30, 5 o'clock or so. Hey, real quick on the Freedom Groups. So we're closing down this round. We're going to probably open our next round somewhere around mid to late July, and we'll run a fall semester of those groups. So we'll definitely be revisiting that.